Do insurance companies intentionally make policies confusing?
Okay, so let's play this game. How do you define hail damage?
It doesn't matter what it is.
Man, we get held accountable every single day.
And you still do it.
And I got to tell you, insurance companies are much happier to pay and resolve claims. No one is sitting in a room saying, hey, if we word it this way, everyone's going to be completely effing confused.
I think carriers very clearly make sure things are well defined and very clear when it benefits them and leave things ambiguous when they can play in the gray. Absolutely, and anyone that says otherwise is crazy.
I now have 1,900 more public adjusters all out there trying to make a living off the insurance claims process.
Today I present to you debate between public adjuster and lawyer who represents insurance companies. Steve Badger versus Sam Cook. I absolutely enjoyed every minute of this debate, but first let me give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, Chad Wilson Law Firm. If you find yourself debating insurance company and you need legal help, Chad Wilson Law Firm have beaten State Farm multiple times in the courtrooms, and I guarantee you probably can help you too. Go to Chad Wilson Law Firm website, submit the form if you need their help. Thank you, Chad Wilson, for fighting the good fight. Enjoy the debate. All right, guys, you are in for absolute treat today. We are officially ending Sam Cook's career today. He agreed for this debate.
I don't know if I agreed to anything, but
all right, I have
a discussion.
Here's the format. I have 20 questions. I might or might not ask ChatGPT to format it. And then I'll ask the question, both of them will answer, and we'll go to the next question. Super simple. You game? All right, good sport. Question number one. Who actually protects the homeowner better, insurance companies or public adjusters?
Who do you want to go first?
Let's start with you.
Easy, public adjuster. I'm the only one whose incentives are aligned with the homeowner. I don't see a point in the process where an insurance company's incentives are aligned with the homeowner. Insurance company's job is to be a profitable business, and there's no way to make a profit and paying out every single claim that's owed, given the current.
But you're also getting paid, so your incentive to get paid.
That's amazing, right? You work for free? That's cool. Good. I've never met a public adjuster who works for free.
That's not what I said.
But wait a minute.
I said my incentives. What I get paid.
But you just were critical of my client for earning a profit.
Of course.
You earn a profit. In fact, you, by taking 10% of their proceeds, guarantee that they're never able to fix their damage.
That's not true at all.
How can they fix their damage if you take 10%?
They have to pay 10% out of pocket. It's no different than your side.
Oh, so all your clients pay
deductibles.
10% out of pocket? When you sign up, show me your PA agreement. Does it say you cannot use the insurance proceeds to pay me? Doesn't say that, does it? And 90% of your PA or your clients take the money out of the claim proceeds to pay you. You know
Most
that.
likely.
Yeah. So under that scenario, they can never fix their damage unless one of two things. Either A, you got a side deal with the contractor and you're telling me it's 50 grand to do the work and he's really doing it for 45.
Well, that would be fraudulent.
That would be fraudulent. Or B, they're not getting to fix all their damage.
That's not necessarily true though. How's that any different than deductible?
How could it work? Because they're going to pay.
They have a $20,000 roof. They're going to pay a $1,000 deductible. They're going to pay $2,000 in PA fees. That's $3,000 out of pocket.
But then, that's right. If they are going out of pocket.
Correct.
Okay, I agree. But you and I both know that the vast majority of insureds are not going out of pocket to pay the PA fees. It's coming out of the claim proceeds.
I would disagree with that, and especially coming from your side of, well, we can increase deductibles and they can finance it, right? Who's to say they're not financing PA fees? Financing their deductibles or taking ACV funds on work they don't care about.
So that I have no problem with. Mm-hmm. If you tell me that the fence is damaged and my client pays ACV on the fence and you want to leave it how it is and you want to use that money to pay the PA fee or pay your deductible, I got no problem with that. That is fundamentally
So with the
fair.
question though, who protects the homeowner more, I brought up my incentives. I'm incentivized to get the most for the client and get everything that's owed, right?
You said that, but you also said that you're the only person who's not out trying to profit from the claim.
I didn't say that.
Something like that. My insurance company's trying to make a profit.
I said that for you guys, for me to make a profit aligns with the homeowner's desires, which is getting their claim paid. For you guys to make a profit, it aligns with not paying the claim or reducing claims.
And that's wrong because my clients know that they need to pay claims consistent with the coverage provided by the policy. And if we don't, there's a whole world of people out there like yourself and others who are going to take us on for doing that.
For sure.
So to say that as a fundamental proposition, insurance companies don't want to pay claims. That's simply wrong.
I didn't say they don't.
Claims.
I never said anything about their desire. I said where their incentive is aligned.
And I believe that our incentive is aligned with the insured as well to pay claims fully, fairly, and quickly, consistent with the terms of the coverage. As a PA, the more he can juice out of us, the more he can make.
Juice is an interesting term. We have 20 more questions, but
All
I'm
right.
sure juicing will
Started
be one
with
of
a good
them.
one. Yes.
I love it.
You can go first on the next one.
Okay.
I'm moderator. I tell people who goes first here.
Sorry, we're sorry to take over your debate
Guys,
here.
let's play a
Our
game.
umpire here.
Below in comments, give a point for each question who you give point to. For the first one, does point go to Sam or to Steve today? And essentially we have a 20-point game, and I want to see the final score, and I'll go and analyze
What's the
comments. The price, Mercy hoodie. How about that? Working
Wonderful.
for the hoodie today.
So let me understand, an audience full of contractors and public adjusters, and there's a chance that I'm going to win this.
Oh, we have
okay.
we have a lot of homeowners. You're in my show, so we have actually plenty of homeowners as well, and other players too. So
All right, good. Can I quickly call all my insurance company friends and get them on there?
I would actually, could you? Can we pause quick? I
No,
would
let's-
love for
let's
them
go.
to see. Oh,
yeah, go ahead, share it. Share it.
I'll quickly jump on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm live on Dimitri's channel. Please
Oh.
come save my ass.
It'll be on YouTube later as well. Second question: what percentage of claims are underpaid versus exaggerated? Steve, you go first.
Yeah, I believe that there are claims. As a percentage, I'm not going to say, but I will acknowledge that there are claims that are underpaid on my side. And I'll acknowledge that there are claims that are exaggerated on the policyholder side. That happens. What I hope is the case is that the majority of those claims fall within the area of reasonable disagreement. All right, so we think one thing, they think the other. That is within an area of reasonable disagreement. The percentage, I don't know. I think it probably depends upon insurance company, fairly.
Yeah.
And on the other side, it depends upon who the PA is.
Do you think
fairly.
we have more exaggerated claims or more underpaid claims?
Yeah, I don't think one or the other outweighs the other. I think there's problems on both sides.
sure, I'll put my career on the line. I think there's more underpaid than overpaid. Thoroughly, I don't see any world where there's more overpaid claims than underpaid. Once again, to incentives. An insurance company's incentive is to make sure they pay out fairly, right? That is ideal. I see more scrutiny on making sure they don't overpay. I see very little scrutiny coming from the carrier side on making sure they don't underpay claims. When a desk adjuster leaves something off, misses something, writes something as a denial, I see very little review, or very rarely that the desk gets it and goes, you know what, we disagree that and that should be added. But I see all the time where it's submitted from an adjuster to, hey, here's all things I requested, here's what should be paid, here's the damages I saw, and it gets brought down. Do you see that same trend? Because I see far more that the farther it goes up the chain, the more things are reduced.
No, in fact, my view is just the opposite. The farther it goes up the chain, the more likely it is that there's going to be a compromise of the claim because they want to get it resolved to avoid litigation. Now, let me go where you went. If we're going to talk about which one is more and give some examples, I hesitate to go down this road because all that crosses my desk is the worst of the worst. And every single day, I see $10 million exactimate measures where I know that I got a contractor who will do the work correctly, code compliant, for $1 million. I got PAs who are
10 million to $1 million, you're saying?
I got one that was 56 million to 10 million. Yes.
You're not kidding about
I
getting
got
the worst
one that
ones.
huge numbers, 200 million when the claims resolved ultimately for 90 million. So yes, every single day the numbers come in grossly exaggerated on the policyholder side. Happens every single day because it's what we call the law of large numbers. If I can throw out a ridiculously high number and then maybe eventually they'll pay a little more and I can still get a higher number than I'm even entitled to. There is a epidemic of problem on the policyholder side with the law of large numbers. It is throw anything out. I'm limited by zero. The policyholder side is eliminated by their imagination. That's all they're limited by. It's just whatever I can throw out there. So I don't like going down this road of who is worse. I understand the question. But if we're going to start casting stones about problems on my side about underpayment, I'll give you 100 examples where it's just as bad on the other side.
But I think it's because you ran too far one direction. You brought up that, well, the claims came at 200 million, but settled at 90 million. Well, the homeowner's claiming it. Okay, they're saying, hey, this is it, or the property owner's saying, hey, it should be this. That doesn't mean that's what's paid. And the question is, are they regularly underpaid or overpaid? I'm saying you guys have a lot of control. The carrier side is the only one that has control as to whether something's underpaid or overpaid. The homeowner, very rarely, or property owner, is submitting something and it's getting overpaid and it's getting past the layers of approval.
So let's be real clear. The homeowners are not my problem that I face. The problem is the contractors and the public adjusters.
But
and
a contractor can
policyholder
submit
attorneys.
$200 million on what should be a $10 million claim all day. But the question was underpaid or overpaid. It doesn't get overpaid if those are getting cut.
I think the question is initially, right? There's always a process where you resolve things. But initially, what comes in, there's gross overpay or over exaggeration on the policyholder side, and I acknowledge at times that claims are undermeasured. I get it. I'm never going to admit that it's intentional. I will not admit that insurance companies intentionally undermeasure claims.
On the other side, do you think it's intentional on the contractor side?
On a few occasions, I do. I absolutely see it. It is so outside the world of reason. Either as to what's the reasonable cost to repair, what is the date of loss, what is the cause of damage, there's all kinds of things. But I will say that those pure fraud situations on either this side or my side are rare. I do believe they're rare. But as I said, the worst of the worst crosses my desk. I do see it, but I think it's rare.
Interesting. I think this would be a topic and a few other questions, if I had to
It's the
guess.
second interview where I'm asking Steve questions, and you don't like numbers today. You don't want to put numbers on anything, but I want to throw a number that I've seen in the past 5 years interviewing companies who do supplements, anyone like public adjusters who go after insurance companies. And the number that I see on a regular basis is 40% increase industry country average. So most companies who do supplemental work, exaggerate work, they claim that average claim is underpaid 30 to 40%. Your take on it? And I'm talking about like thousands and thousands of claims going from original estimate to final paid estimate, 30 to 40%. Big group of businesses now who supplement insurance claims.
Can I take this one first?
Go ahead.
I think I'm actually not going to offend you on this one.
Sure.
It is the policyholder's job, and by extension the contract's job, to prove the loss. If you are relying on a State Farm adjuster who's been there for 3 weeks to write an accurate estimate of all the components of a roof, it's going to be underwritten. If you leave it up to an adjuster who does not have a construction background, you're leaving up to them. And 90% of claims that we see, it's an initial carrier comes out, they wait for the carrier estimate, and then these supplement companies are like, oh, they left all this stuff off. It's like, well, yeah, you're leaving up to them. It's your job to prove loss. So in my opinion, those percentages seem like they could be very accurate. I'd say more of 20 to 30, more than 30 to 40. But it's like, I wouldn't say it's a negative thing. I'm not going to say like, oh, the carrier's intentionally underpaying or they're not training their people how to write estimates. Like construction's complex, estimates and exactment are complex. Yeah, the contracts have to go back and explain, hey, here's all the stuff that has to be done. I don't think it's an issue.
It's the dispute resolution process then.
Yep.
And we have this situation where we measure using Xactimate, and we actually correctly use Xactimate, then we should have a good measure of the reasonable cost to replace the roof in that market for the allegation of what our contention is to what's damaged. The other side is going to say, no, your pricing is low and you're underscoped. Right? And that's what happens. So we have the two numbers, their number and my number. There is always going to be some compromise in between. We want that to happen in the claim process. So to say that we're doing really bad stuff because we're resolving a dispute within the middle, I don't believe is fair. I'm limited by here. I'm not going to go down, right? I'm here. So the nature of the resolution process is that my number is always going to go up. This is why I go nuts when I hear insurance companies lose 90% of appraisals. Well, we don't lose 90% of appraisals. Appraisal has two parameters, and you're resolving a dispute somewhere in between. The insured has to come down to a number. Does that mean the insured lost the appraisal? All right, I could say the same thing. If we go up 30% on average, are all claims inflated by 30% because the PA went down? I mean, we could play these number games, but it works the same on both sides. We get to a fair resolution in the middle. Both sides give some and say, okay, I can understand that argument. That's the process.
I agree fully. Insurance comes in
Finally,
under,
we agree on something.
contractors come in high, and there's a me in the middle.
So I'm going to stay alive for a little bit longer. Are public adjusters incentivized to inflate claims?
Ask that one more time.
Are public adjusters incentivized to inflate claims?
I will say that public adjusters are incentivized to obtain the most amount of money they can on a claim because they work on a contingency fee. Their interests are that the more they can recover on the claim, the more they are going to make. Now, with that said, I don't
But
believe
lawyers do that too.
they do. Yeah, only lawyers that work on a contingency fee. Right. Everything that I do advocates for less litigation. That should be clear. I advocate against my own interests. I want there to be fewer lawsuits. I am happy to fix all these problems and work myself out of a job. I'm old. I'm happy to go do something else. But that is the nature of the public adjusting profession. Now, do I believe it's wrong? No, I get it. I'd much rather have a PA take 10% than a lawyer take 45%. So I'm really happy when I see a PA get involved who actually says, okay, I am incentivized to get the claim up to a fair number because I'm going to make a little bit more. But what I don't like are PAs who are out there advertising, I'm going to maximize the claim, using that word. All right, so the PAs who are out there saying, I'm going to maximize the claim, that bothers me. And you're going to say, Mr. Badger, I agree with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's a simple one.
Why do you like that? Why do you hate that word so much? Maximize the claim. Is it just bad marketing, triggering a word?
If my clients were to say, we're going to minimize the claim, all hell would break loose. Right? We're not there to minimize the claim. We're there to get to a fair value. PAs should say, I want to get to a fair value. We may disagree about what a fair value is, but they can say, I want to hold the insurance company to their payment obligations. I want to make sure they're paid fairly. But maximize just has this ugly connotation to it.
I do think there's two things that we keep coming up with, which is the goal of each side and the incentive of each side. And I want to make sure those are clearly separated for the audience. I do not think an insurance company's goal is to not pay claims. I think they're incentivized to not pay claims. Same as a PA. I don't think a PA's goal is to inflate a claim, but yes, a PA is incentivized to inflate a claim. And those are very different things.
And I got to tell you, insurance companies are much happier to pay and resolve claims. They are not incentivized to pay a small amount because there are regulatory issues we have to deal with. We get market conduct exams by the departments of insurance. They review all of our files. We got PAs who will hold us to our burdens. We got policyholder attorneys. I assure you, it is so much easier for an insurance company to fairly measure a claim than to minimize a claim. We want to pay claims fairly. The issue is, what is fair? Right. You may view it as minimizing. They may have a different definition of what is fair.
And I would actually use that as leverage to say why I think the PAs are more honest in the process. As a PA, if you overdo a claim, if you get too much, more than what's supposed to be paid, you could lose your license, which means you lose your career. It's over. An insurance company can sit here in court, can sit here and hire attorneys, can sit here and get sued repeatedly, can continuously get pushed back, and no one actually ends up in significant trouble. Yes, it's a pain for the company. Yes, you lose money, but it's a livelihood on the PA side. It's an individual gets taxed versus an entire corporation. I think one thing you've talked about in the past is Robin Hood, right? Like no one wants to take from the rich, give to the poor. Like that's terrible. But then today, like as a PA, I think there's more of an incentive to not overdo it on claim. We stop on claims all the time and go, hey, that's enough. On the carrier side, I think there's an incentive for you guys to let things run wild, not correct issues, especially innate issues that happen. And then no one's really getting held accountable the same level as what a PA would.
Man, we get held accountable every single day.
And you still do it.
Well, we don't do it. That's the issue. Then let's also talk about PAs. I've been at this now in this space for 15 years. In those 15 years, I've seen one public adjuster lose his license in my state. And that's because he was doing really, really weird shit. It is almost impossible to get a PA's license taken away for improper
we see them
conduct.
All the time. I cover plenty of stories of
Yeah,
PA
we see
losing
quite a bit of them. And I'll tell you what, every single one I see, I tell people on my team this all the time. The number one thing, every time a PA loses their license, I see inflated the claim or inflated insurance claim as part of one of the charges. Yeah. And I always think, I go, that's funny. I never see State Farm getting their license or producer license removed or any insurance carrier getting any criminal charges for reducing a claim.
Yeah, well, you're talking about losing a license versus being punished for doing something wrong. I'll tell you, insurance companies are held to their obligations.
One's being killed,
day.
one's getting a slap on the hand.
I don't view it that way, but yeah.
I feel like I'm sitting between two trains that go opposite directions.
I think
same direction.
I think we agree on the majority of things.
Yeah. But to be fair, you don't like word maximizing, but you also use a lot of word of minimizing the risk. So it's kind of like that train, right? Like one is minimizing the risk and another maximizing. Yeah, that's the industry. Who commits more fraud, contractor adjusters or insurance carriers? Sam, you go first.
Contractors.
Contractors?
Yeah, fraud. Yeah, contractors.
Yeah, flat out fraud, there's no question. Yes,
Yeah.
we have an epidemic fraud problem with certain contractors in this country.
Systematic misconduct
Yeah.
would be a different thing.
I
in
would
my
not.
opinion.
I would not say that about public adjusters, but I will say it about contractors. Especially this past year, I have seen more reports of fabricated damage this year than I've seen in the last.
Why do you
10
think
years.
that was?
Because we had a bad hail year. Didn't have a lot of storms. Didn't have hurricanes or hailstorms, and you got to fill the coffers somehow. So if we're talking, and your question was interesting: contractor adjusters or insurance adjusters. Remember, one of my hot topics: there's no such thing as a contractor adjuster.
Is that
They
what
got to
you said?
stay in their lane.
No, it was contractor adjusters or insurance
contractors
carriers.
/ adjusters, like / PAs.
No, it's supposed to be like all three categories:
Oh.
contractors, adjusters, or insurance carriers.
And I think we could all
Gotcha.
admit the problem right now, the worst problem with fraud, flat out fraud, are contractors. I don't see my clients committing fraud. Okay, we may have disputes about minimizing claims and underpayments, but I view fraud as the intentional misrepresentation. On my side, an intentional non-payment of a claim. Insurance companies do not intentionally not pay claims. Right, we may have disagreements about what's damaged, what's owed, but I can assure you, you're not going to find documents that say, we recognize we owe this claim, but let's jack with Mrs. Smith and not pay it. Okay, that would be fraud. That doesn't happen.
I would say different names. There's a saying for this, but yes.
Go ahead.
Fraud, in definition, is much easier to press on individuals. So like contractor, yes, I agree contractors have more fraud. Systematic misconduct, systematic designed ways to screw people, I would agree the carriers do much more.
You would agree with who?
I
Not
would
me.
myself.
Okay, all right, let's be clear.
I stand.
Next question then. Why so many claims closed with no payment?
Yeah, claims closed for no payment because A, they're not covered, and B, they're below deductible. Right, those are the two reasons claims close without a payment. Not because of fraud or whatever that you want to argue. Someone has made a determination that the claim does not have coverage or it's below deductible.
I'll push back a little bit in line with the previous question. So we do have contractors committing fraud, but would you agree that we also have some adjusters who deny more claims than other contractors? Often complain that, hey, this adjuster never approves anything, and you'll see the same adjuster, they'll deny like 10 claims in a row, and then other adjusters are better. So like there's good and bad on both sides, but do you agree that some adjusters have more denials than others?
I cannot disagree with that. Just like any industry, you're going to have people who take different views toward issues. Some adjusters are going to be more lenient in finding damage. Others are probably less lenient. I understand that. It's not a perfect system. I get that. And but likewise, just on the public adjuster side or contractor side, same thing. Different people interpret what's damaged differently. In a perfect world, all of my adjusters should apply the same standards. I get that. They should. But I can't deny that it's going to be different, or one of the factors is going to be who the adjuster is. I get that.
Do you believe hail damage is subjective?
Hail damage can be subjective, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Which is this big area of disagreement we talk about in the middle. Now, every single day, new hail damage disputes come into my office, and I put them in two buckets. Either the bucket where we're within the region of reasonable disagreement, or we're out here where somebody's doing something wrong. And if out here it's my client, I call them up and say, you should have paid this, okay? Write them a check immediately and tell them you're sorry. If it's over here on the fraud side, I call the insurance company and say, this is gonna be fun. Let me go jack with this guy.
And to
Right?
no
This is
surprise,
fraud.
same thing on the PA side. We get claims where I have to look and go, this is all damaged, it's not damaged, it's like footfall, all this other stuff. They didn't owe for it, that's why it's not paid for, to, this clearly should have been paid for, and then everything in between.
And everything
So-
in between. And I will tell you this, here's part of my problem that I see today. 20 years ago, we had 77 public adjusters in Texas. As of last week, I think we had 1,962. All right, so I've now have 1,900 more public adjusters all out there trying to make a living off the insurance claims process. I am fully supportive
It's an
of the
interesting
role.
way to phrase that.
But it is, right? That's what they're doing. They're making a living off the claim process. I mean, I may not like the wording, but that's what they're doing. And of those 1,970 PAs in Texas, only about 150 of them are members of TAPIA, where they've got to go get their training and CE every year. The rest of them are out there just out there. And so we talk about uneducated, untrained adjusters. I got the same problem with public adjusters who are out there now. I think we should all agree that we need to raise the bar on both sides. I'm going to focus on raising the bar on public adjusters, and I think I've got TAPIA and NAPIA in agreement that we need to do that. We need to make it harder to become a PA, because most of my problems are not the members of TAPIA and NAPIA and the good, reputable people. My problems are these new entries into the industry who don't have a clue what they're doing. They're just trying to juice us for money. And you're going to say, okay, but there's some undertrained independent adjusters and company adjusters.
No.
And I can't dispute that. There are. My industry needs to do a better job on training the people on my side.
You done?
I have 1,000 things to say, but we can go on.
Let's keep going. Do insurance companies intentionally make policies confusing?
Of course not. No. Is there some poor writing in
Wait,
policies?
are you being serious?
Absolutely.
Oh, I thought you were joking.
No one is sitting
That's
in a room
crazy.
saying, hey, if we word it this way, everyone's going to be completely effing confused. Of course not. No. But with that said, could we do a better job in plain English policy writing? Absolutely.
Do I think carriers very clearly make sure things are well defined and very clear when it benefits them and leave things ambiguous when they can play in the gray? Absolutely. And anyone that says otherwise is crazy. To think that an insurance company would not write a policy in such a way that it could protect them in some cases and protect them in these cases, like they're going to leave it gray here, black and white here, to the benefit of themselves. Every carrier in the world
Steve,
wouldn't do that.
Color me crazy. All right, color me crazy, because ambiguity and confusion is not my friend, because we all know that the law interprets ambiguity against the insurance company. So why would an insurance company draft a contract when we know that the ambiguity is going to be interpreted against us? Now, well, here's the problem. Policy wording has been the same for decades and decades. We didn't have issues about various things until recently on certain topics. Then insurance companies have to revise policies. But we're dealing with legacy language that over time is being changed. There is no intentional desire to create ambiguity. No way.
Does it benefit the carrier to have ambiguity?
No, because ambiguity is construed against us.
But you made a very strong point that you said in litigation, in court, it doesn't help us. Guess where it does help you? The thousands and thousands of claims that don't end up in a courtroom, and the adjusters and the desk adjusters and the managers playing that ambiguity to deny claims. We see it all the time. Plenty of cases don't make there. Yeah, you're right. When they make it to court, it sides with the policyholder, it sides with the public. The ones that don't, it only benefits the carrier.
I will tell you, I can understand the argument that you're making, okay? But I do not believe that there is an intentional desire to have ambiguity. I do understand that there are situations, and people on your side call it a war of attrition. People are just going to go away and not sue. I got to tell you, though, given the number of disputed claims that are out there in my state at least, I don't think there's anybody who's not finding a contractor or a PA to come after us these days.
Who writes insurance policies? The question is, do insurance companies intentionally make policies confusing? I feel like we have two Steves. Steve is the lawyer and who answers as a lawyer, and what's the real answer? That's what I'm trying to get, because earlier I was talking to other Steve, and that other Steve told me that in TEMCO warranty, there is a lawyer's language that make it harder and harder to believe. And you told me TEMCO has good intention, but their lawyers made this warranty sound not reasonable. And do you think that we have the same problem here, that maybe insurance companies have the good intention, but whoever writes the policy makes it confusing?
Well, there's no question there's poor drafting. I absolutely will agree, just like the TAMCO situation where I believe there was poor drafting by lawyers who didn't understand the issues. That's how I view it. That's just what I looked at it. And I've had some discussions with TAMCO about it. I believe that was poor drafting, and I think they will correct it. I agree that there is poor drafting by insurance companies. I reviewed a form last night that was sent to me that an insurance company wants to use, and I read it and I cringed. I said, this is so confusing. This is not good. And I rewrote it this morning at 5 a.m. and sent it off to him and said, here, this is crystal clear now as to what you do and do not cover. That's what we want. We want clarity, so it's 100% clear what's covered by the policy.
Insurance companies use ChatGPT and use this prompt. Revise my policy and rewrite it so fifth grader can read it and understand.
Let's be clear. Some departments of insurance now are running the policies through readability scoring to make sure that it's readable to the average person, and I fully support that.
Now, let's be honest. Is a single homeowner reading their policy?
Nobody's reading nothing.
So at a certain point, what are we arguing about? No one's going to read anyways until things go sideways.
All right, let's go to the next question then. Should public adjusters be regulated more strictly?
Sure.
So you're underregulated, you would say?
Yeah, sure. Regulate us more. Gets rid of my competition. It benefits me. I don't see where you could have more regulation beyond the fee controls. Is interesting. If we want to talk about regulation, you seem to be proposed in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't looked at your LinkedIn in a while. PAs charge too much. They make too much money. They should have a cap on what they can charge. Did you push something like that at some point?
I never said the first two. I never said they make too much money.
But there should be a cap.
I believe that a 10% cap is an appropriate cap for public adjusters in my state. Yeah. Now, back to your question, as I alluded to earlier, we need to better regulate public adjusters. The problems that I see need to be corrected. And remember, when an insurance company does something wrong in a claim, when an insurance adjuster does something wrong, there's an insurance company behind it who can be sued. If a public adjuster does something wrong, there's no one else there. Right? Who is there to help the homeowner when a public adjuster does something wrong? So we need to regulate.
Well, it's not that there's
adjusters.
nothing there. There is bonds. There is, insurance.
There's a $5,000 bond, and most do not have insurance. So there's very little there. I mean, there's something, you're right, but very little. So what do? I think we're all in agreement that we need to, raise the bar to become a PA. We need to make it harder. We need a better test. We need some type of experience or educational background. So you can't be a car radio salesman on Tuesday, go take the test on Wednesday, and you're out there representing homeowners and their claims on Thursday. That is wrong. Because remember, public adjusters perform an act that used to be considered the practice of law. Right? Public adjusting was found by courts in most states to be the practice of law. And because of some smart PAs got the legislature behind them and said, hey, lawyers don't want to do this.
You did just say there are smart PAs.
There's 6 of them. I've met 6 of them. Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
We met
7
today.
now. I just met you today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For
But
the
one
record.
just fell off my list, so I'm back to 6. Yeah, but that's another story. They got the law changed so they could do this. Okay? And I'm glad. I'm absolutely glad. But since they get the practice law, the standards that apply to them should in many respects be comparable to the standards that are applied to lawyers. That includes fiduciary duties, how they handle money, in particular how they handle money. I mean, the abuses that I've seen with some of the PAs that we know that have done some things with homeowner money that's bad, these are all things I think we can all get behind to raise the bar to become a PA.
I will say the bar is already significantly higher on the PA side than any adjuster on the carrier side.
How is that?
If a PA messes up, what happens? They lose their license, they lose their career. You're saying it's never happened. I've seen it happen. As a PA, if you mess up, it's your reputation, it's your business. Most are a mom and pop shop. There's very few like large PA firms, right? The majority of PAs are individuals. If they mess up, it's their whole career, it's everything gone. With an insurance company, and we're looking at an insurance company as a whole, the desk adjusters typically don't have a license. Most of the adjusters are undertrained, and if they mess up, the insurance company eats the blow. They are not held to the same standard internally as an individual to what a PA is. If I mess up, I'm in big trouble. It's me. If they mess up, not my money. How often have you heard that from the carrier side, from a carrier adjuster? Not my money, not my check. Oh, pay this, don't pay that. I don't care. My manager will deal with it.
I've never heard an adjuster say, I don't care, it's not my money.
To that point, a desk adjuster is not held to the same internal, external standards that a PA is. A PA messes up, it's on them. A DA messes up, the carrier handles it.
Yeah, I agree that a PA should be held to a higher standard. for the same reason I just said. There's no backstop when a PA screws up to
Should a
protect its
DA,
client.
should a desk adjuster, should an insurance adjuster be held to higher standards?
Well, let's talk about desk. You said they're not licensed. Most desk adjusters that I deal with, at least in my state, and states that require licensing, the desk adjusters have to be licensed also. Right, so just that they're unlicensed, I
There's
think
some
is
states
wrong.
that don't.
Some states that don't require licensing at all.
Correct.
Yeah, but as a general rule, your in-house, your desk adjusters, your company adjusters are licensed also. Should they be held to a higher standard than field adjusters? No, I think they should all be held to the same standard. They are involved in the adjustment process to determine the coverage on a claim. All adjusters should be held to the same standard. I believe that there are sufficient framework under the law right now to hold us responsible when we screw up. And I admit we do. And there's lots of people out there
Do you
holding
agree
us
then, if you're
responsible.
saying there's sufficient framework to hold you accountable, your side accountable, is there sufficient framework to hold a PA accountable? And if
no.
not, what should there be?
Yeah, there is not. We should do more to hold PAs accountable,
Really?
not for benefit of my clients, but for the benefit of the homeowners. Yeah.
How do you see that panning out? What do you see
I
that
think
framework looking
what's
like?
going to happen is we're going to work cooperatively with TAPIA and NAPIA to A, raise the standard initially to become a PA. B, we're going to require additional bonds, insurance perhaps, to provide protection for the ones, or for people who are the victims of the bad actors. And then finally, we're going to have monetary requirements that are similar to what lawyers can do, requiring trust accounts and things to ensure that money actually gets put into the right account. Or even, and I know the PAs aren't going to like this, but perhaps we should have a requirement that PAs should never have their hands on the insured's money. The proceeds should only be paid to the insured. And the PA can go collect just like anybody else, go to their client and say, hey, I'm done now, give me my 10%.
I hope you don't fall out of your chair, but I agree. It's actually the most annoying part of my job is having to handle the money.
Because you're honest, I assume. I'm going to accept that you're honest, and your clients like you, and they want to give you your 10% out of the claim proceeds. Yes, and they want to give you that
They
money.
gladly pay it out of pocket many times.
Yeah, and which is even better. That is
If you
the
can
best.
show that you provide a service. And I agree that most PAs are able to work without providing a service or explaining their benefit or really providing customer service the way most do.
And I think I've also heard from some other
If you
well-known
took the money
PAs.
away from them and the money went directly to the homeowner, I guarantee you would see PAs shape up. That would cause the largest ripple of PAs forcing PAs to raise their standard.
if
If the checks no longer went to the PA, if they
It
went
just
straight
went
to
to
the
the
homeowner,
homeowner.
yeah, the PAs would have to shape up.
and I appreciate that, and I'm hoping that's something that we could put into. The plan is we're hoping to work in the next couple of months. I'll sit in a room, myself and some good leadership members of TAPIA, and sit in a room with 4102, which is the PA statute, and edit it. Say, okay, this is what needs to change, and then we submit it to the Texas legislature, and they change it and make it harder. And if one of the requirements is that in no circumstances should the claim proceeds ever go to the PA, and make it fairly clear that the homeowners still have their obligations to pay the PA, that would be awesome if we could all agree upon that. So I'm glad you said that, so thank you.
Invite me up.
Love it.
No, I got a bunch of Texas guys already who are
Look at
clamoring
us
to get in that room.
agreeing with everybody. Should insurance companies face criminal penalties for bad faith?
Here, absolutely not for bad faith. Okay, for fraud, for intentional conduct, yes, just like anyone
Why not
else.
for bad faith?
Because bad faith is kind of a nebulous standard. Bad faith is actually a standard of failure to conduct a reasonable investigation.
It's
Things of that nature.
ambiguous, right?
It's the law. It's ambiguous. It is a fairly open standard, so you can look at it and then hold an insurance company civilly responsible.
Wouldn't you say it'll raise the standard of the industry? If punishment is severe, would you say the insurance companies will be more careful to deny reasonable claims?
Yeah, but look, there should be severe penalties for true criminal conduct. Criminal conduct or criminal penalties are based upon intentional conduct, right? You intend to do something wrong. Bad faith is not intentional. Bad faith could be just negligent work and failing to conduct a reasonable investigation. If they intentionally said this is covered, but screw her, we ain't paying, that is criminal conduct.
Is intentionally under training.
There's no one
adjusters.
intentionally undertraining adjusters. They may
I
be
disagree.
not properly training. They're not intentionally saying, I got a good idea. Let's put a bunch of people who worked at Taco Bell last week out there because they don't know shit and they're going to do a bad job. There's no insurance company doing
That'll
that.
put that in writing. It happens. I wholeheartedly, we will disagree on that point
They
till the cows come
intentionally
home.
put people out there that don't know what they're doing?
Yes.
No.
Because it benefits them.
How does it benefit them to put someone out there who doesn't know what they're doing? It absolutely does not. In fact, more often than not, they're probably going to look at blisters and
Do
say,
we have comments
looks like
going
hail
right now?
damage to me.
No?
Yes.
Dang it. The live comments would be fun. From what the contractors actually see in the field.
But I would
It's-
push back on it because we have seen insurance companies lose bad faith cases in court. And for bad faith to go to court, you have to be pretty intentional, say, well, sue me, prove it in court. And then the reason they're saying it because there's no criminal circumstances. They're like, okay, we'll pay you $10,000, $20,000, whatever the case is, if you prove it.
Again, bad faith is a civil remedy, and under the law, civil remedies only require a preponderance of the evidence. Just a little more likely than not that they committed bad faith, or versus them getting it right. Right? A criminal standard is what? Beyond a reasonable doubt that they did something wrong. It's really, really bad. So the bad faith standard is much less. So to try to apply a criminal standard to bad faith, no, I don't accept it, but I will accept that intentional criminal conduct by anyone is wrong, which is why I've always supported Doug Quinn and what his group is doing. Okay, I get that. There should not be fraud by anyone in the
Is
claim
it
process.
illegal? Is it illegal to be stupid?
Is it illegal to be stupid? No.
That benefits the insurance companies more than anyone else I
And
know.
stupid
I
people.
know you're sticking to your theme here. I get it.
No,
I
no.
like it.
What
but
is is there any incentive for insurance companies to better train their field adjusters?
100% yes. Yes. Because when we do a crappy job, there are thousands of people out there clamoring to hold us responsible.
There are thousands of people on 10,000 denied claims. Yes, 1,000 out of 10,000 come back to you. I think if everyone that had denied claim actually went back and I'd say this all the time. If any of the big insurance companies paid every claim that was owed, they'd be out of business years ago. There is no way that they
You
can
could
pay.
say that, but it ain't true. But that's okay. All right.
Next question. Why do claims often change after multiple inspections?
Sure, because we have a reasonable dispute as to what is damaged. And the insurance company receives additional information from the other side. They look at it and they say, okay, we understand what they're saying. They've now provided us with an engineering report, or they've got a PA who's written a good report laying out why it's damaged. They actually got a guy now who has given us information that the hail occurred during our policy period. So there's a myriad of reasons why over time, with additional proof or support from the insured, or maybe even just a fresh set of eyes on my side, I get that. There's all kinds of reasons why things might change.
I agree with
during
the former
process.
what you said. I don't think it's nefarious. I genuinely think that 90% claims people go into it with, well, the insurance come out and they'll give an opinion. And it's not till it gets denied they go, oh crap, I gotta actually prove it, right? They hire a PA, the contractor puts together stuff. They actually get all the data and prove to the carrier it's owed, and then you see a change. Yeah. If they brought the same level of effort they go put into getting a reinspection on the front end before the adjuster comes out, they probably wouldn't have been denied.
There may be some truth to that at times. I'm not going to deny that. Steve, the reasonable person, is going to say, I can understand that there are probably some claims that happened that should have been bought after the initial inspection that weren't. I understand that. I would be dumb for me to deny that. But it's just part of the process. Again, we work cooperatively to get to the right answer.
Yeah. I don't think we'll disagree on that one at all.
Common who gets the point. Are adjusters trained to minimize payouts? You go first. Are adjusters trained to minimize payouts?
They're not trained to maximize them. No matter what, every single one gives same line. I love paying claims. I pay for every roof I can. Awesome. Before we get on this roof, can you please define what hail damage is? I do this with adjusters in the field all the time. This is where I say uneducated adjusters are an issue. All the time. Can you please explain what hail damage is? Oh, well, I know it. No. Before we get on this roof, before we get on Miss Smith's roof, what is hail damage? If you cannot define it for me right now, you are not educated enough to get on that roof and make a determination if coverage is owed.
Okay, so let's play this game. How do you define hail damage?
Crushed granules in the center, pierced fiberglass, you can say displaced. It doesn't matter what it is. We can have a disagreement on what it is, But if they can't come up with a definition and they're just going up with the seat of their pants, that's not fair. Our definitions can not align. Hague's definitions don't align with other engineering firms' decisions.
What's your definition of hail?
I'm not going to disagree with what you said. Okay? Crushed granules, I may not consider that to be hail damage because it's not going to have any effect upon the performance of the roof, either the water shedding capacity or long-term
Not cosmetic
performance.
versus functional hail damage, just hail. Did hail change something?
Well,
Did
now
it alter
that's
something?
different. Now, hail changing something is different than what does the policy cover? My policy covers physical loss or damage. So what I want to know is, did that roof sustain physical loss or damage by the covered cause of loss, the peril, during my policy period?
Does knocking, and this is way more PA than I ever go, just so you know. I do not argue claims on this. But for a reason of debate here, if it knocks granules off the roof and the roof has less color than it did before, is that damage?
I would take the position generally that simply a loss of granule is not physical loss or damage because it's not going to affect the water proofing ability of
That's
the roof.
functional
or
versus
the long-term.
cosmetic.
No, it's not necessarily. That's what it is.
So if a window wrap gets dented, it has no effect on how it performs.
So it's like metal roofs, same thing. If a metal roof is dented, I'm going to take the position that that is not physical loss or damage, regardless of whether we have a cosmetic damage endorsement. That is my view. Now, with that said, I understand courts have ruled differently and said that dents equal damage, regardless of whether it's going to rust through or leak. I respect that. And now what do my clients have? They have a cosmetic damage endorsement that says we're not paying for dents because they're just cosmetic. I'm not a big fan of the words cosmetic damage. What I recommend to my clients is just a simple dents endorsement that says we don't pay for dents. Period. And that is a better way to address it. But I'm not sure it's fair for you to ask an adjuster before you even get on the roof how he defines damage.
What part of that would be unfair?
Because you're like, what right do you have to give him a quiz or a test as to whether he believes what you believe as to damage?
I'm not
Why don't
asking
get
you
up there
agree
and
with
say,
me.
let's talk together about what we believe is damage.
Because if we don't set a goalpost before getting on there, then the opinion can change. I'm just saying, hey, before I get up there, I want to know what you're looking for with hail damage. I don't want to show you 20 hits that you're going to disagree with.
I got to tell you, if that question came upon my desk, we got PAs out there doing it, I'm going to post it on LinkedIn and say, PAs, don't be a dumbass and do that. You're just creating an adversarial nature
There's nothing
before you even get on
adversarial.
the roof. You are looking to
nothing
make sure that
adversarial.
he has a definition that agrees with your
No,
definition.
a definition can disagree. You're coming to a crazy assumption here that I'm trying to corner him. I'm just saying.
But why else would you do it then?
Because
Why
here's
don't
what
you
happens.
Wait until after?
Because I've been on tons of roofs, and here's what happens. We get up there. Nah, I'm not seeing it. Okay, well, hey, I define hail this way. Here's what I'm seeing here. Nah, I don't agree. That's wear and tear. Okay, why do you think it's wear and tear? Why do you think it's blistering? Why do you think it's this? Why do you think it's not hail damage? I don't care if you know what hail damage is, but define the 20 other things that you're claiming it is and not hail damage. Explain how it's not hail damage. When I have a definition, this is what I view. Here's engineering reports that support it. Here's the evidence.
So crushed granules are damage in your view. If we have nothing but
Not
crushed
even- no, no.
granules, that's what you just said your definition is.
I had the word and. So crushed granules and a pierce in the center, displaced granules around it. Okay? Those three things, and I'll qualify it as that's probably a hail.
See, and I'm going to play the same game with you now with your definition that I know you're going to do with the independent adjuster and try to corner him that what he's saying is not necessarily what he said before, and you're going to put it in your report that before we got up on the roof, this is what he said. This is the type of adversarial approach that I do not believe is productive.
So you think it's productive for us to go up there blind? We don't know what hail damage is. You just tell me based on the seat of your
Not
pants. do you
what
think
I
it's
said.
hail? But that's what happens out there.
Do you
All the
think that
time we
they
get on roofs.
blindly go up there.
Yes.
Blindly.
Yes.
And they don't look at the roof.
Yes, we get this. We get them looking around. They don't crouch down. They don't touch it. They don't get close enough to even see. They go, I'm not seeing it from the top
That's
of the
funny.
ladder.
It's
I'm
the
not getting
same
up
thing
there.
I hear about PAs, that they don't even bother about inspecting with us. They're just so arrogant. They call everything damage. They just wave at stuff. See, we can both have our narratives, right? And it's not productive. It's not. I can create this broad narrative with this broad, vast statement that all PAs just go out there and believe everything is damaged no matter what. And they don't care. And they're
But if you're
trained.
saying PAs do that, then question the PAs on the ground. Hey, how are you defining this hail damage? You're the one saying there's hail damage.
I'd rather
your
work
side should do the same
cooperatively
thing.
and get to a.
I think it is cooperative.
Yeah.
We can disagree
We
on
can
that.
disagree on that.
Let me mediate this situation. So recently, our
5 minutes later.
our Congress was actually asking questions. Our governor of Minnesota. Do you remember when he was asked, like, what's the woman, what's the fraud? I think what he's trying to do with his approach is not only to find common ground, but also make a person accountable. And the reason, like, and you've probably seen it, when person goes in front of Congress, what does Congress do? Like, congressmen, they're like, hey, what's the fraud? Like, actually, recently, they were asking Attorney General of Minnesota, is like, hey, how long you've been with with Minnesota? He's like, you know that question. Are you Attorney General? You know that question. I'm not going to answer it, right? I don't agree that asking the question creates a conflict, but it is to look for a common ground. Like, for example, let's say Sam says, hey, I'm fitter than you. And I'm like, what's the definition of fitness? How do we find it? Like, you can
Sam
be
would never
faster than
say
me.
that.
I can be, I can lift heavier. So if we come up with a definition of fitness, like whatever it is, like, you have to do certain things. Now we can test our fitness. But if we cannot agree on definition of fitness, he might think like, well, if I have a bigger pack, I'm fitter than you. If I'm stronger, if I'm faster, whatever. And I think what he's trying to do with his approach is, he is public adjuster, you have insurance adjuster. If before they go on a roof, they cannot agree on definition, what's the point of even going on the roof? Would you say it's easy way out for insurance adjuster not to agree to anything because there's no formal definition? No, it's not a damage, and he said it's a damage. And now who's gonna mediate? Who's gonna be between them? Is it do we go to court next? Litigation?
Quarter appraisal.
Yeah, look, my client's obligation is to conduct a reasonable investigation. My client's obligation is not to have an agreement with the public adjuster as to what's damaged. Their obligation is to go out there, conduct a reasonable investigation. So if they want to go out there and conduct that investigation without the PA being present, if they can prove that that investigation is reasonable, it's okay. Do I recommend that? Do I recommend that? No. Okay. Do I recommend they work cooperatively with the PA? Yes. But if I've got a client and they're calling telling me that this PA always hotboxes them and wants them to be give a definition of damage before they get on the roof, I'm going to tell them just ignore that PA, go get on the roof, conduct your reasonable investigation, and then come up with your claim decision. I'm sorry. But I've seen the game played by PAs where they're doing that, they're giving questionnaires, they're recording, they're doing all these games. Right? We'll just go conduct our investigation on our own. I have no obligation to reach a definition with you as to what is or is not damage.
When you get to a courtroom, when you get to litigation, and you're presenting all this evidence, and the policyholder, the PA, their attorney is saying, there is hail damage to this roof. Here it is. Here's why we think it's hail damage. There's an engineer report. Here's the engineer definitions. This is hail damage. Are you guys really standing up there and going, well, Jerry, our adjuster, he said there's no hail. Oh, on what basis? Well, he's been doing it for 10 years and he didn't think there's hail. Like, what are you doing at that point? At that point, you have to provide a definition, no?
I will have consultants and I will have an adjuster who will both testify as to what they believe was damaged.
And they're going to have to have a definition of
They will
that
provide
is.
a definition, just like the insured side as well in that situation. But the gamesmanship that goes on in the field with this type of approach that you have, I don't believe is productive.
It's not something I do all the time, but there are situations for it. And State Farm has their own guides. They have their own definitions. They've produced these, sent it out to homeowners. It is these guides that show what is hail damage. The funny part is I've taken this photo, it's right here, it says, created when a hailstone crushes the mat material and can displace granule. Okay, it's their definition of hail damage. I had an adjuster refusing to address what hail damage was on a claim. I had sent in countless photos of hail damage. The desk adjuster said, no, it's not hail damage. I took and screenshot that exact photo and sent, is this hail damage? And that adjuster went, no, it's not hail damage. I said, well, it's hail damage from your own brochure. And I understand, don't get me wrong, it was sassy, it was lame, but I still submitted and said, hey, so if we can agree hail's so subjective that you disagree with your own company's stance, how are we to say that you don't know for it? Because
I can't disagree with that logic. In that situation, as I with Dimitri earlier, given what you just laid out there, assuming it's all truthful, I can't disagree that that was a mistake by the insurance company.
He just boxed you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's go to the next question. Is litigation a failure of the system or part of the business model?
Litigation is a great benefit to have, and I don't want to say anything positive or negative because I don't want to do more of it, but I also don't want it to go away. I'll leave the rest to you.
Yeah, it's not a failure of the business model. What it is the part of the process when you have a reasonable dispute as to what the definition of hail damage is, when damage occurred, what the price of repair of roof is. It's just a necessary part of the process because we are going to have disputes. That's just the nature of what we're dealing with hail in particular. Right? What is and is not damage. There's going to be disputes. And it's just part of the process. But let's be clear, my clients don't like litigation. They don't want to go to suit.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and we resolve most matters. At the end of the day, we end up paying more than it would have cost to pay the claim initially in a lot of circumstances. So we'd much rather resolve claims either through the claim process, through that area of negotiation to get it resolved, if there's a dispute, or through the appraisal process. Yeah.
What would be a fair claim process? What would it actually look like? And guys, comment below your definition of the hail damage, please. What would a fair claim process actually look like in your opinion? You go first.
I think we have it. I think we already have it. I have actually very little disputes with our current handling. I think field adjusters should be better trained before making decisions. I think desk adjusters should be more willing to hop on a phone and have an open, thoughtful discussion. I think PAs and contractors should be less aggressive and more open-minded and more sharing. But I genuinely love what we do, and I don't think that we're that broken. Like, we're 99% of like as good as the claim process will ever get. I think insurance companies are reducing coverage in ways I can't imagine. I think they're adding endorsements and all this stuff to reduce coverage left and right, dent exclusions or whatever. Like, I think it's comical, but once again, the policyholder picks their policy. They can pick the coverage that they choose. And so although there's issues with it, I genuinely don't think it's broken the way that seemed to frame it.
I agree with you. There's always room for improvement in the process. Overall, the process works.
I'd rather be a PA now than 1960.
Love it. Should claim denial rates be public information?
Yes, just because I'm interested.
Yes, with context. Yeah, again, just because a claim is denied does not mean an insurance company did something wrong. And that's the problem with how the data is used. 44% of all claims in Texas were denied last year. Okay, well, let's go back and look at those 44% of claims that were denied. What percent of them were below deductible? What percent of them were there was no coverage at all? There's a number of reasons why claims were denied. So let's look at how many claims were denied that were ultimately determined that the denial was wrong. Mm-hmm. All right, and what I really like are the market conduct studies that the departments of insurance do, where they just take 100 claim files and they say, okay, we looked at 100 claim files and we've analyzed them, and of those 100, we found 4 that we believe were improperly denied, or whatever the percentage is. That's a far better statistic than this 44% denial rate.
Love it. What's one practice in this industry that should be illegal but isn't?
Say it one more time, sorry.
What's one practice in this industry that should be illegal but isn't?
That's a really hard question because I don't have anything that I can think of that I really think should be illegal that is going on. Are there things?
Anyone making a decision on a claim on the carrier side should be required to be licensed. That is the number one thing, is making claim determinations in representation of an insurance company without a license that can be held accountable for it. That, I think, should be illegal.
Okay, so let's ignore your illegality comment. Okay, I'm not going to weave illegality into this, and I'm just going to respond to what you said. I agree. Okay, I agree. Insurance companies should use licensed adjusters to investigate and adjust claims. That I agree with, and I will tell you that is a hot topic on my side right now. 4101.001 of the Texas Insurance Code requires licensed adjusters investigate and adjust claims. 4101.002 allows exceptions for people who are hired to provide technical assistance, so they can hire people to help them. But if you are going out there on your own and making a determination of damage, scope of damage or cost of repair on your own, you should be licensed for that work. And I can assure you that I am very mindful of that issue, and my clients are mindful of it also.
I think anything that should be illegal is illegal. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything that isn't illegal right now that should be. Do you disagree with that?
Yeah,
nothing's come to mind.
I'm probably gonna think of something tonight while I'm having a glass of tequila, and I'm gonna say, "Darn it, I should have thought of that."
That would have been funny.
Yeah, we have tequila in the basement.
Get me going now. We could be here all day. Yeah, no.
Make sure we're not live if that starts.
I can't think of anything that I say, these guys are doing this, and they have to stop. I mean, we could also talk on the other side about contractors need to stop doing unauthorized practice of public adjusting. That needs to stop. It's getting worse again. We need to stop it. But that's already illegal.
Yeah, just hire us instead.
If you were a homeowner, who would you trust with your claim? Insurance company, public adjuster, contractor?
Who would you trust with your claim?
Yeah.
I think by trust with your claim, like who would you trust most in the process? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, probably.
I would trust whose incentives are aligned with mine, and that's a PA. I'm not saying that you should distrust anyone else, though. I'm not saying you should distrust your contractor. I'm not saying you should distrust the insurance company. I'm saying that a PA is the only one whose incentives are fully aligned with yours as a homeowner. Granted, the checks go to them. No one else in that process is incentivized or has incentives that are aligned with yours. But it doesn't mean that any of the other ones are,
And I've said this earlier in response to that comment. I believe that my client's interests are aligned with the insured in providing a full, fair, and prompt investigation and measure of the claim. We simply do not want to intentionally underpay claims. Now, on your question, the one whose interests are not aligned in the claim is the contractor. The contractor should not be involved in the claim process. The contractor should be there to provide information as to the contractor's observed scope of damage and the contractor's estimated scope of repairs, or preferably their actual price, their retail price. That is independent of the word claim that is in your statement.
Every claim should have a PA on it?
I do not.
If
no.
you think the contractor should be removed from the claim process, who is supposed to represent the homeowner in proving the damages?
Yeah, I believe in a lot of situations that the adjuster can go out there, and if an adjuster identifies damage and adjusts the claim consistent with the coverage provided, and I do believe that happens in the majority of claims, I believe the homeowner has adequate protection in the process.
And in all fairness, those claims don't come to us, right? As a PA, like the claims come to us or after they're done.
And they don't come to me either. So I know from talking to my clients that, okay, what percentage of your claims really end up with me or with a PA? What's the percentage that are actually getting resolved fully, fairly, and no one ever complains because they bought the roof quickly and everyone's happy? And that's the vast majority of them. That happens. Now, you may argue that, they're all underpaid and they don't do anything about it. But I don't think that's the case.
I never said that. Read the question one more time.
If you were the homeowner, who would you trust with your claim?
Gotcha. I think there's actually a place for all three. I think you should trust the contractor to give a fair scope of work and fair price and understand what it takes to rebuild it. I think you should have a PA on every claim. I don't see a claim that shouldn't have a PA. And that's like, it doesn't have to be me. It's not to incentivize my side. Mm-hmm. I think as a homeowner, you're not going to be able to understand your policy. Okay. We've already talked about verbiage and policies. No homeowner is going to understand their policy. No homeowner is going to know how to estimate a claim. No homeowner is going to have connections to all the people and professionals it might take to win your claim and produce evidence. A homeowner is not fit to prove their loss. They are not. They should have someone that does it for them. I think a PA provides that, and I think they need a carrier, obviously, or there'd be no claim, right? And they have to have trust in that carrier to at least do the right thing the majority of the time.
And in the majority of times, the insurance company goes out, measures the claim, measures it fairly. There's no need for a PA. There's no need for Mrs. Smith to give up 10% of her recovery when the insurance company fully measures and pays the claim. So why don't we do this? Why don't we have a situation where let's first give the insurance company a chance to do the right thing. Let's let them measure the claim based upon their reasonable investigation. Mm-hmm. And if there is a dispute at that point, then okay, let's bring a PA in and let's the PA help Mrs. Smith get more money out of the claim that is properly owed. But give the insurance company the chance to do the right thing first.
2 more questions. We're going to wrap up.
A good rabbit hole if you want to go down it.
Let's go.
No. Well, I'm sure it'll pop up.
Let's finish it up strong. You're still alive after 18 questions. Congrats, Sam. What reforms would fix the system immediately? If you were like on a board that can, I don't know, you're the president of everything, what reform would you do?
Yeah, I would, we've talked about it already. I would raise the bar to become a public adjuster in Texas, or in all states. And I have no problem in raising the requirements for education and licensing of company adjusters as well. Insurance companies aren't all going to like me saying that, but I have no problem with increasing the standards on my side also. Those 2 things, I think, would go a long ways toward resolving all the things we're fighting about.
In Texas, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's a bad faith case, carrier loses, the insured can recover their legal fees, correct?
under certain statutes, certain of our bad faith statutes, yes.
Should that be in all states? If the insurance company actually did something wrong, most homeowners, this is the analogy I always tell people, if you have $1 million claim, an insurance company could spend $999,000 fighting it and still make it out ahead. And I'm not saying they're intentionally doing it. I'm not accusing anyone. I know you'll get very defensive if I go down that rabbit hole, but it is the reality. If it's $1 million claim, they can spend $900,000+ fighting it and still make it out ahead. The homeowner is always at a disadvantage. The whole point of insurance, I'm trusting you with today's money in the case something happens in the future. As a carrier, you have a fiduciary responsibility to not screw your homeowner. But when you're holding all the funds, does it not only seem right that the homeowner should be able to get their attorney fees back if it happens, because that would provoke attorneys taking things on contingency. It would invoke homeowners going back after these claims, because we hear it all the time. Well, most homeowners don't chase after the claims. If they could freely recover their attorney fees and attorneys be willing to take on contingency, I would imagine we'd probably see more.
All right, real quick, several things. One, we do not have a fiduciary duty to our insureds. Okay, we have a duty of good faith and fair dealing to our insureds. That's different than a fiduciary duty. You have a fiduciary duty. I have a duty of good faith and fair dealing. Number two, you said if an insurance company did something wrong, should we have to pay their attorney's fees? Doing something wrong simply, in my view, no. Okay, things can be done wrong. What's the definition of wrong? However, if they are found to commit conduct that constitutes bad faith, all right, under whatever the legal standard is in that state, I have no problem with insurance companies being held responsible for attorney's fees in that situation. If there was an actual statutory bad faith violation, all right, I could understand that if it's provided for by the law. Yeah, through litigation. Not through appraisal, not through claim adjustment, but through litigation. If we force someone to sue us, hire a lawyer, pay them 35%, and then they find that we committed bad faith, then I believe it's fair that they recover their attorney's fees. So let me ask you a question then along those lines. Do you believe it's reasonable to create a statute that public adjusters should not receive a commission on uncontested dollars?
Clarify.
Should we give the insurance company a chance to do the right thing to ensure that Mrs. Smith gets the entirety of her claim proceeds and not have to bleed off 10% to the PA? Should we have a situation where before a PA can take a commission, the insurance company has the right to make the claim payment, determine what the measure is, pay the claim, and only then, only after the claim is initially measured, can a PA actually take a piece of the recovery?
I think the only person that hurts is homeowners.
Why is that? They get full recovery based upon what the insurance company pays.
PAs already don't make a ton. I know you think PAs make too much, but if I make 10% of a $30,000 roof, and you now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying, well, if insurance originally rates 20, but it ends at 30, you can only charge your fee on that additional 10, correct? I will not handle a claim like that and all the work that goes into it for that amount of money.
If I were to agree that if we pass legislation that PAs get no money on the initial claim, the insurance company has the right to do the right thing, pay the claim, but PAs can only recover based then on disputed dollars. If I were to agree to a higher commission in that situation, would you support it then?
From a business standpoint, yes.
Yeah. If you're looking for protecting Mrs. Smith and making sure that her roof is able to be put back on, we should agree that the insurance company should first be given a chance to do the right thing, pay the claim that is owed without anybody sucking money out of it, and only thereafter.
The sucking money thing out's crazy. I am telling you, the majority, some, all, whatever, put a percentage on it. Homeowners have no problem paying a PA their fee out of pocket if necessary.
And your clients, God love your clients, but I'm going to tell you, if you Google, put how are public adjuster commissions paid? Put that in ChatGPT. I put it in Google a couple years ago, and it said, public adjusters are paid out of the claim proceeds. And where does that come from? From the 400 PA websites that said, we are paid out of the claim proceeds.
If we want to name something that should change in the industry, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, one more question.
No, last question. Let's make it under a minute.
Okay.
Where does each side admit they are wrong?
We've already done this.
Here, I'll go first on this one. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Insurance companies must accept that Xactimate is not the be-all, end-all of the claim measure. Xactimate is an estimating software. With an estimating software like Xactimate, some jobs come in less, some come in more. So no insurance company should ever say, we will never pay anything else but Xactimate. Right? And we talked about this morning. This is why I tell contractors, stop using insurance proceeds contracts. Use a contract that says a retail price, and then tell the insurance company why your number that's 6% higher than the average of Xactimate, why that's a reasonable number and should be paid. So that is the one thing I will readily admit, that any insurance company who refuses to vary from Xactimate is wrong. Right? We use bids every single day in the claim process with my clients to try to figure out what the real cost is. I will readily admit that.
PA should stop advertising that they get paid out of claims proceeds.
Love
Easy.
it. Guys, comment below your score. I'm going to be sending Mercy hoodies to awesome people who watch our content on a regular basis and engages. So comment below your score. What do you think about debate? I'm going to read all the comments and be sending some hoodies. See you guys in the next video.